I am so excited to be here on the show today with Heather Noska. Heather, welcome.
Thank you. I am really excited to be here.
Yay. Well, I'm really excited to be here with you today because you've been a part of my Art of Reinvention program. We just finished our first cohort, and I'm just so excited to chat with you a little bit more about your business and your experience. And then also just share a little bit more about your journey into going from someone who has been working inside corporations to evolving how you're consulting with brands. So shall we dive right in?
Yeah.
Okay. So since people are just learning about you, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Oh man. Like anyone,
question.
Wild ride. I'm going to start in high school where I really excelled in math. So you'll see like the idea of reinvention has happened multiple times in my life. By the time I graduated, I actually went to film school. So hard left.
Wow.
I think that surprised people. But when I went to film school, I started noticing that it wasn't the art. I liked being around it, but I really was into orchestrating it and being on the producing team of it. I got to go to Los Angeles and live there for 3 years, post school. And from there, I knew I wanted to go to business school, which led me back to New England. And then I ended up in the tech startup world. So it seems like, I bounced from industries, but there was always a through line of kind of orchestrating how businesses work. That was always my interest. And that kind of led me into when I got to the startup world. Like a lot of startup stories, it either takes off or it doesn't. And when it didn't, I had already been introduced to a consulting team, and they kind of brought me into the consulting world. So that's how it started.
That's how it all got started. And then you just went out on your own recently.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And you have your own operational consulting firm.
Yeah. Yes. So formally I've had my company for a while, right? I was subcontracting. And this was just the first time I've put it out there as me. So that was really the starting point with this idea of like reinvention and needing to know where to go now that, it was me I was putting in the marketing and talking to people about. It wasn't me behind another brand, behind another name, or just taking projects because they were being fed to me.
Okay. So when you're walking into a startup or a company and they're considering hiring you, like what is the process for getting that onboarded, and like why are people actually hiring you?
Oh man, loaded question.
I know. I feel like we all need a Heather on our team.
So I love startups. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of creativity. Like I said, I love being around creative people. So that is also the startup world. And they get to a point where, right, they're just executing and doing and figuring out how to like make things happen. And at some point they're like, we want to grow. This is the sweet spot for me, because it's like, okay, now how do you take what you've done? How do you take your idea, scale it, and actually have systems around you that help you scale it, bring teams in and help that like idea grow and get it to more people. So it's a really exciting time. Every startup goes through this. And so really like that sweet spot for me is like, oh, it's now a puzzle for me, right? You've got buy-in, you've tend to have budget, you have, those are probably the two biggest things actually, like especially buy-in. When people hear process early on, they're like, it's like they're allergic to the word.
Yeah, people I think creative people have an aversion to systems because it feels like it boxes them in, but actually they do create a container for more growth and scale. Jason and I talk about this all the time because I'm the systems breaker and he is very process oriented because he's a chemical engineer.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And and the tech startup was funny because you actually have both of those personalities,
right?
Because in
the
tech world, you have the engineers. And so I've worked a ton with those personalities. I think the idea of systems, and that word gets used so much more now, is a little bit more digestible for people when they hear that and they understand that systems are a framework. The way I look at systems and when I talk to people about them is not just, oh, here's your process and here's what you follow, right? And taking the humanity out of it. It's really like, it's also made up of your people. Right. So it has to make sense to them They have to enjoy it. And all it is kind of freeing them up to bring themselves to the job they want to do. So that's how I look at it. And that's how I like bring it into the tech world. But it's just the energy of kind of a young, like growing startup is just so fun. Like I said, there's just a lot of that creativity, that energy.
I love it. So when you're walking into a company for the first time, like what's your process to be able to dial in what it is that they actually need?
Yeah. So there's 3 really quick things I look at. Like I said, the way I look at systems, right? It's people, process, tools, and leadership. And so I think one of the first things you look for, depending how big the team is, I talk to their leadership and figure out like, what's their style? What does their day-to-day look like? If you know they're still in the weeds, that's going to have to be part of what you're developing for them to get them out. And so you're like having to help them shift their mindset. And again, this is every startup, this is every founder, this is every creative, shifting away from some of the doing so that it can grow. That's a massive part of this. Then I look at kind of 2 things kind of more on the ground. I look at, part of what I've implemented for so long on the kind of like the process and tool side is CRMs. Mm-hmm. So even without talking to anyone, I can look at their CRM and get 2 pieces of feedback. How easy is it for a user within a team to use it? So you know right away, like how good that team's processes are. And then communication. How is the handoff from that team to the next team in line? You have a lot of internal teams working together to bring the whole idea to life, right? Tech startup, you've got marketing, sales, you've got onboarding teams and support. And so it's really crucial for them to talk to each other. So I can kind of look at a system really quickly and get a really quick idea of what's hard for them to do, what could be easier. And so it immediately shows people like, like the ideas start flowing and they start to see like the value of thinking about this like in a strategic way, by identifying, I think, some of the things like tactically really quickly. But they're usually an indicator for how challenging someone's job is. And
that's interesting. I have so many questions because there's like a couple of things that you said. I'm going to go back to the leadership thing that you said earlier about shifting away from the doing to that. And that's the way that the business is going to grow. Mm-hmm. How do you actually, let's just dive into it now. How do you work with leaders to move them out of that like daily grind, I guess is the best way to put it, because this podcast, you know, the majority of people listening to this are going to be founders of companies or people who have their own business in some way, shape, or form. So if our listener is feeling like they're stuck in the grind and they know that they need systems, but they don't even know where to start, like how would you help them?
Yeah. So from a leader standpoint, there's couple different capacities, right? The way I can work with teams, right? Fractional is different than consulting, is different than coaching. Mm-hmm. So first it depends on the flavor. But someone who's actually needing to shift, I'll probably start coming in and doing those operations for them. And in a more organic way, it's really difficult. If you're doing that, like in a fractional, we'll use a fractional example. It's really difficult to hold up a mirror really quickly and make some changes. But when you start to show them like part of what will make you grow operationally, like one of the first things leaders have to do to kind of get out of the weeds. And this is really, it was really challenging for me. And it was almost impossible for me to do without someone from the outside helping me. Okay. It requires team and it requires trusting that team. And there's a couple of different layers of trust, right? You don't have the idea of like buying back your time.
Right.
But it's also buying back your energy. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, right, you're not just asking people to do a series of checklists that you don't want to be doing. It's also empowering them to make decisions so that you don't have to be there every moment of the day.
Right. So they're not asking permission basically to do their job. which is an interesting dynamic. If that's ever happened to anyone listening here, it's something that's happened to me before.
Yep. Same. And you're like, and there's twofold too. You want the person to trust themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and then you want to be able to trust them, and both sides have to happen.
Exactly. And to know that, like, if you're not having to follow up and be like, is it going to get done?
Yes.
It just gets done.
Yep.
And they're reporting back saying it's done.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, we could talk hours on this topic.
I know, seriously. Now, when you're kind of going through this process with leaders and helping them get out of the weeds and create this process or system, whatever it is, to delegate, I guess, and empower their team. On the flip side, like, what are some of the ways that the team can take ownership? Like, how do you coach a team to take ownership of what they're supposed to do?
Oh, that's a really good question. To be honest, if I'm stepping in and I'm in an empowered position with this company to have that role, I just start kind of giving them what would you do? I just start giving that to them and say, like, ask me when you need it, or go to them when you need it. Or I start talking them through how I would think about it and helping them develop the way to look at things so that they start to trust themselves. Right. So that's a much more organic process than, as if you have the right people in your company, and I've seen this too, and sometimes the right people who are fantastic operators, they get shifted around a company and their role is constantly changing.
Oh, interesting.
But if they land in a role that is meant for them, there still might be an element of trust, and it has a lot to do with dynamic and the culture and the current leadership and how they've always communicated with them. Like, if you've built a culture of yes people, it's really hard.
It is so hard.
Yeah.
Also, because I've had that before. Mm-hmm. And also, you want everyone to be bought into your vision of what it is that you're creating, right?
Yeah.
And if there's misalignment there, that's one thing. So you want people to be on board, but you also want healthy conflict, right? Because that's where the best ideas come out.
Yes. Yeah.
But healthy, constructive content, not like conflict, not catty conflict. Like, I don't like this, or why are you doing it this way? It's more like, maybe there's another way, and here's something else that I've seen that might work better. Like, the worst thing for me as a leader and someone who's been running a small team is when someone comes to me with a problem without a solution, and it sounds like they're just complaining instead of actually trying to be part of the solution.
Yep.
Do you find that happening a lot
in
your organizations?
Have a couple examples of that. I won't say necessarily a lot, but you do see it. And I mean, I saw a 200 person company where people were afraid to speak up. If they spoke up and had a different idea, or they made the mistake, they would get, there would be finger pointing. And so people wouldn't acknowledge it. And you're like, there's 200 people in this company, yet this is a big deal.
And no one would take responsibility for mistakes.
Yeah. And so as a consultant, I realized I was coming in and going, you know what, blame me. And then here's how we're going to fix it. And so I would kind of start to shape shift how people were and let them see what it looked like. So like, as a consultant, I took on a lot of more responsibility trying to help shape. I realized that looking back, I'm like, oh, dang, that particular client, part of the reason why it was just way more than let me build your system for you. The idea of operations goes way deeper. And if you don't have like operations leaderships, like I have certain clients now, me stepping in, I get to kind of play a different role of sheriff. Like, okay, this is how you lead. Cool. I see eye to eye with you and we're good. And I like your vision is what you're trying to execute. And that's my role here to help you. But I can play a slightly different leader to help invite more people into that kind of more empowered role, giving them responsibility and kind of let them grow. Because some of these people they're wonderful. Their teams are great. They're just nervous or tiptoeing or saying this is how we've always done it. So,
Right. How much of that is tied into company culture?
Everything. Yeah, everything.
How do you go into one of these companies though and shift the culture? Because that's something that I've been playing around with. It's like, if when you're kind of in a transition or you're upgrading or you're doing something that is new, right? I've been in situations where even the culture at my company felt a little bit toxic, and I was, required me to have to, this was a couple of years ago, but like have to remove people from the team or create an exit, some sort of exit where it was a mutual agreement where someone would leave because the alignment between me and a specific team member or core team members and other people weren't actually flowing well. And it felt like a daily battle. So how do you remove a toxic culture and get something back into a space where there is flow and alignment and people are all on the same page?
A few things.
Okay.
But I can probably boil this down to. First, I will say at the end of the day, there can be misalignments and you will never correct them. There's a difference in values. And so that leads kind of first thing is like really being super clear on what's important to you.
Right.
And living that. And that alone will, attract and repel people already. And it's not what you say is important. It's how you are,
exactly.
Right? So if you don't embody those words, it doesn't matter. I've seen companies like that, right? They put words on a board that sound nice. Like, these are important to us. And it's like, you don't live any of those.
Exactly.
So people know.
Yeah,
people
words on a board
that
you don't let. Yeah, exactly.
People can feel that. But as far as, I will say, I think that the culture and those values stem from the top, right? There's a lot about leadership that you're leading and all you're doing is supporting people, right? You're in a sense getting out of their way to do their job, but values absolutely are set at the top and trickle down. And so if you behave a certain way, if there are certain things important to you, that's what your team starts to form around. And it can be that's a tricky one for leaders. And I won't say it's always right. Misalignments can come all sorts of places. Right. I've also had to let people go on teams where I was like, at the end of the day, you try to align. And was it me just not being clear about who we are and what's important? Or at the end of the day, are our values just very far apart? And so I've had that too, where, not everyone can fit. And it just honestly, it probably boils down to that's not a great fit.
Right.
But changing culture, you need someone to say, hey, this is on me and this is where it's going to start, and kind of watch it. But it probably has to happen more organically than not. But it needs someone, accountability is one of the first things that you see, when people aren't actually taking it, the idea of radical responsibility, right? To make a change, it's going to start with me, and then I'm going to see what happens. But being clear on your values, owning it from the leadership position, let me see what I can do to help shape this. And so the idea of that company with a lot of yes men, I was saying, it started with, the guy at the top. He liked having people around him who agreed all the time and wouldn't push back. And then the idea of when you're having healthy debates, it really is about the ideas. If you're debating about anything else other than what you're there to do, you've lost the message. You've lost,
exactly. Right? This is a really fascinating topic for me because I love the idea of healthy debate, but sometimes people on teams, and this is maybe something that you have some input on, I've noticed that, part of having a healthy debate is poking all the holes in it, right? And why it might not fit, why it might not align. But I found sometimes when you do that, because it's my job as a leader, when people bring an idea to say, okay, this is great for these reasons, and also here's where I can see it failing. But people take it personally, and then because you poke the holes in it, they don't want to give ideas anymore. So how do you overcome that? Because I'm looking at this, I'm I want this to succeed, but I also want it to succeed in a way that I know from my experience is going to work. I'm actually in the middle
Yes.
of something like this right now. So this is
Yep.
interesting.
And it, to me, as someone, right, a leader of a company, you get the ultimate say. Here's
Right.
how I think about it. Here's my goals, my vision, and it ultimately needs to align with that. However, inviting ideas in and explaining, I think there's an idea of explaining when you hear ideas why you went one way or another. And the second part is, this is a big one, detaching ideas from like who you are, right? Like I have ideas. I am not my ideas, right? So like people being able to talk about them and thinking that, you know, your ideas are bred, right, in different environments. They, right, like even if I'm the one that brings it to the table, it still has room to grow. It has room to change, but that is not like, I am not that idea. And I think what you said, like people are afraid to then share ideas if they get shot down because they take it personally. And
What
it's
is that about?
really hard to, it's hard to commit.
Yeah.
I mean, you could align that to anything in life.
I know, right?
We're not going to talk about politics, but politics is a big one, right? Like it's hard, and it's a big one for me to talk about in the sense of work. Just that people identify so strongly with certain things, and I don't think they realize they're doing it. But when you identify with ideas or, right, like how you're identify strongly, even with the idea of identity, right? Like I am this, 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 and this. Even if it's a label, if someone talks to you about maybe concepts behind that idea and it presses against who you are as a person, you're never going to even be able to have a conversation. So that happens with even something as simple as bringing ideas to the table. And so I think there's an art form to having conversations about it, and it's a practice. And
right,
maybe what I would do if I were the leader of that team, if I sensed that someone was doing that, I would like more invite them, like more invite more ideas and say, hey, we're just talking through this idea. Here's what I've thought about. Here's how I look at it. Here's the good parts. Here's the bad. There's nuances to everything.
yes.
And so there's always good to take, and there's always maybe things we leave aside. And so the more you can articulate that as a leader too, I think in the way you can articulate the way you think about things and invite people to understanding that, I think it breaks down more barriers than just like, nope, yep. Because then people are like, did they agree with me because of who I am, or they didn't agree with me who I am, right? Like the idea of picking favorites. I mean, people talk about that a lot in bigger companies.
And I think
they just break it down to.
I think as a leader too, just asking more questions about like what the thought process is on it. And, you know, you mentioned something about like, even in this political climate, I'm taking it this way. It can be really charged and hard sometimes because people do identify with a certain worldview sometimes that can prevent them from being objective.
Yes. Yep. Or nuanced.
Yes, exactly. And that can be challenging without getting into the details. I mean, I got a message from someone who listens to this podcast a couple of weeks ago who had completely misinterpreted something that I said and was basically demanding that I create a public apology. And I was like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. That's like not even what like, I'm sorry that you took it that way, but also that's, you know me, that's not who I am. Like it's interesting how people really do filter things through their worldview, and trying to understand that more can be super helpful. And also, you know, I will say when she brought this thing to me, I was like, well, you know, this is the first time I'm ever hearing anything about this or even had that awareness. And also, like, you know me, and that's not who I am. So, and I also am one of those people who, when I'm really passionate about something, I will dig my heels in the ground, but I also can see both sides of any coin, which I think more and more these days is so important to understand that there are people on both sides. And this is why one of the things that we've really chosen as a company for Flourish and Thrive Academy, and me just as a personal brand, that we've always chosen, and this is a little bit of a sidebar, is like, we will not get political about anything because we can appreciate that people are coming into our community with completely different worldviews. And I'm not here to say one is right or wrong. Like, you're allowed to have your worldview and your belief system. And we also need to create some format to come to the conversation. And this, I'm just going to give a shout out to Catherine Gardette, who's in the Art of Reinvention, because this is her whole message, is to be able to bring people on both sides of the table together. And that's her whole idea behind this thing that she's launching called Vote, which brings communities and organizations and any type of bigger business or community in the sense of like a local area together, so that people can have conversations about difficult things. And I think that's a gift. It's very hard. And I say that I have a lot to learn about it, and it's challenging. So it's impressive to me that this is something that you have really been able to support in organizations as well.
There's so many things, so many different directions I could take this. And I won't apologize for bringing politics up. It's just such low-hanging fruit to see how certain things play out like this.
Oh,
like
it's so polarizing. No, it's the best example, right?
Yeah. But it's the same kind of patterns and communication style that you see in, regardless if that's what you're talking about, in business or in any dynamic on teams. And maybe, so one of the things I'm learning to do, one ways I'm learning to use AI, has been super fascinating, right? I'm playing around with it so much. And I've been using it as write me daily prompts. Like, this is my goal, right? I use any word, up level, expand. I want to grow into like a better version of myself. Give me daily prompts to help guide me and kind of pull ideas out.
I love that.
It is insane what it can do and where we got to in just a week. But this idea of being like diplomatic and understanding, and I wish I could say verbatim how it addressed this, but this concept of holding and seeing that people have opposing views and being able to hold them and acknowledge that without judgment. We just have two different views. Cool. How do we move forward? How do we leverage both of those and keep moving forward?
And how can we still be friends even though we have a different
Yeah, right? Where I'm like, I
welcome that. Like, I welcome people who think differently than me. And I think it's very sad when one side or the other can't open a conversation to someone with a different viewpoint. I've been in rooms where I've just shut up because I have a different point of view than anyone else, because they're all bashing like one idea without ever trying to understand like the other side. And that to me is dangerous. And I think it doesn't even matter if it's political. It could be anything, like literally anything. Yep. But if you're outnumbered, you're not going to say anything. You're just going to be like, okay, well, that's nice.
Right.
I'm like,
yeah. And how do we teach people to say it anyway?
Right.
But
I think that there's been I think, people are worried about getting canceled these days. I mean, maybe not as much as they were 2 years ago, but it was actually a thing.
Yeah.
I want to weave this back into your evolution, because you you joined the Art of Reinvention program. And during one of our coaching sessions in the program, we talked a little bit about you going from being the person doing the work and the fixer in a company to stepping away a little bit more. So I want to just understand a little bit more, like, what was going on your journey that you were drawn to the Art of Reinvention program?
Oh, two big dynamics. I'd say first, I kind of wanted my conversations to change, right? I started in operations consulting 10 years ago, and that's what I'm going to call it. But the way it was presented at the time was probably Salesforce consulting, right? So the idea of tools.
Right.
Except my background is operations. So I am not a developer. I'm not coming into Salesforce kind of operations development. I'm coming from operations. So I started having long clients, longer than this agency was used to, because I would come in and say, tell me your business. Talk to me about your teams. Tell me how you're doing it. Then we'll match the tool to right to that. And I had so much success doing that. So you start to interweave like the idea of tools with operations. And so in the beginning of my career, right, young consultant, coming from operations, started to just do what I knew how to do. And that's actually like get into the weeds. So I started there, and then you realize like, well, in order to like make that happen, you also need to kind of talk about strategy at the leadership level. So I just wanted my conversations to change a little bit. So instead of coming in and saying, hey, I can fix your tools, I'm like, let's talk about why this is such a big deal. You know, you can talk about operations is a lot sexier than people think it is. It is
strong operations. It just like really turns me on. It really does. I'm like, because I'm the worst at it. It's like I'm good at making a mess. Like create some
and people who make a mess, completely needed. People who then take that idea and can bring it to life and to bring it, all you're doing is now enabling the impact you want on people.
Exactly.
So, right, like Amazon has, right, done us a massive service and a massive disservice, because now our expectations of how we interact with companies is super high. And so your operations are tied to your experience a lot more now. And people have very like a thinner margin for like a thinner tolerance, less tolerance for like mistakes made, right? Really high expectations. So operations is just kind of bring it all together to make that delivery and experience super tight. So I wanted to have those conversations and talk about it more on a holistic level, and then having a good understanding of some of the tactical things and right, how you build tools to do that, right? Having an understanding of, I'll talk about data structure all day long with someone. But it's like being able to have
Not
these,
me, no.
Yeah. People are like, my eyes glaze over a little. So I like having like both sides and being able to translate between teams who do both of those things. But I'm starting to really love helping shape it from a leadership standpoint and then guide those teams through that. So that was one major shift, is like, these aren't the conversations anymore. I don't want someone to be giving me orders on how to build their system. Right. I can help you see how it should be built and how your system should be built. So that was one major shift. The second was, and this is a more personal one, is the idea of being visible and realizing like I won't say hidden, but definitely used it as an excuse for a long time. The idea of like working for someone else. And there was a moment at this last partnership company I was in where the intent was to shape a role that I was just more refined for and kind of put me there. And so at first it was like, I love this, right? Give me more strategy, give me more of that. But what it felt like was like being tucked away in the back of a closet. And I was like, that does not feel good at all. Yeah. And then thanks to your Art of Reinvention, you realize like how long that's been a pattern for. And I mean, in everything. Right. I mean, you can put me way back into playing soccer in my, when I was 10 to how it shows up in business now. So that side of it, I was like, I am ready, and it's uncomfortable and it's exciting, but I'm like, I'm ready. Look, I'm wearing pink.
I love it. You're like, I'm here to be seen. I'm going on a podcast. I'm going to talk about what I do.
Yeah. And so the visibility, I think we talked about that on my intake meeting. Right. It didn't take me much convincing. I heard about Art of Reinvention by you talking about it on another podcast. And I was like, something clicked. And I was like, that's exactly where I'm at. And these are the two pieces I want. And but that visibility one, man, that was a much bigger thing than I was anticipating. So still a journey.
I want to ask you a little bit more about what your experience in the program was, because I've just watched you transform and just show up, and you're continuing on with Aligned and Amplified, which is exciting. So tell me a little bit about what your experience was like in the program.
Yeah. So there's multiple, a gazillion takeaways. but I loved being surrounded by a group of women, whether we're in the exact same place or not. There was something similar, right? A moment of, or a time of transformation. All of us are working on wildly different things. But there was something shared there. And so being able to talk about it, and honestly, being in a room full of women, you could have asked me earlier in my life if you wanted to put me in a room full of women, a room full of men, and I would have said men, like hands down, without hesitation. But when you find the right people, regardless, it is magical. And oh man, some of these women, they're just so smart and so kind and so supportive. So that was one of the bigger takeaways. And super excited to meet some of them in person.
So I'm so excited for our mastermind that's happening in October.
Yeah. This is another thing, like learning that you don't have to do these things alone. Like it is your path. But it feels not alone when you're surrounding yourself with people who are either have done it or a step ahead of you or on the same thing. Like, cool, let's leverage the fact that we're doing it together. Let's leverage that energy and kind of move forward at the same time, which is amazing. And I don't know if I've ever felt that before. And then the other side was how much, I think we dug into things that I didn't necessarily expect. I think you hear a lot. I mean, and maybe you don't. I don't know if people have heard this, but I've heard it. And once you start hearing it, you hear it everywhere, that when you're trying to like expand or grow or evolve, it is not about what you're doing. It is about who you're being. And so, digging into all that was super helpful, I think, in your program and how you designed it and kind of like subtly wove it in a way, but it was a lot more about that.
Well, the biggest piece of you stepping into the next chapter for anyone is who you're becoming and the identity upgrade that you experience in that process, because the old version of you cannot hold the container for this new mission that you're on, or the new expansion, or whatever it might be. It's just impossible. And I think what a lot of people forget is that when you're in a season of expansion or growth, it is not comfortable. It's often challenging. But on the other side of it is where I think of this, it's like a cheesy analogy, but the idea of this transformation of a butterfly, right? It's a centipede, and then it turns to mush. And then all of a sudden this beautiful butterfly comes out the other side, right? That's part of the process. Yeah.
I'm so lucky to have a partner in my husband that we are able to talk about these things. And he used an analogy the other day where he was talking about, he does landscape construction, right? That's how he spent a lot of his time doing right now for the past few years. But he uses the tree analogy where it's like every year, like a new season, that tree sheds its leaves and it doesn't die, but it basically hibernates. And then in order to grow new growth, it has to shed them. And so there are things that you have to shed. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, so good.
Why my plants are all shedding right now?
Yeah, right. You're like, right. But I'm like, oh, dang, that's a good one.
That is really, really good.
And it's figuring out like what parts of you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that it's, just figuring out which parts of you have to kind of leave behind, and they're not bad, right? They served you up to a certain point. Right. It's like, thank you. And I'm going to leave you right here. And I'm going to keep going.
In the past. We're good with that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for everything you've done for me. Bless you.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who is thinking about or considering the Art of Reinvention program?
I would say if, right, that concept or that idea, even like remotely called to you, there's going to be two sides to your reaction, right? There's going to be, I have this like intuitive pull. I have this like something like, right, bells are ringing, and you might feel nervous, uncomfortable. The only thing I would say is like, listen to that pull and like keep moving through the discomfort anyway. That's what I would say is like the biggest thing. Yeah.
I love that. Heather, thank you so much for being here today. Where can everyone find you?
Thank you. Oh my goodness. Instagram is just at Heather Noska. My website is sproutconsulting.co. But yeah, Instagram's probably the best way, actually. I love connecting with people on there. I share a lot about my personal life mixed with my professional life. And I hope to just keep doing that more and more.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Tracy.